like to derive some interesting trigonometric formulas which are useful for some exercises and theory as well. I know that this subject is a little bit older than calculus, but it will be done under a different perspective. So I think that it can be very useful in order to avoid learning by memorization and actually learning by understanding and derivations, which is more useful because you don't have to keep things in mind, you have to know how to reason, and that's better in my opinion. But anyway, let's start with the famous trigonometric identity, which is x squared plus y squared equals 1. This is not the trigonometric identity yet, but it's as I described in the first lecture, this is the representation of a circumference. It's this curve right here. At every point x and y, with the coordinates x and y, we have a point on the circumference. And in particular, the definition of the cosine, for example, this angle here, alpha, if I connect the point to the origin, I call the abscissa of the point cosine alpha, whereas the ordinate of the point, I will call it sine alpha. So obviously this point has coordinates x and y, so cos alpha is x and sine alpha is y as well. So x squared plus y squared equals 1 becomes cosine squared alpha plus sine squared alpha equals 1, which is a very important and famous trigonometric identity. I will try to shed some more light on this identity by introducing the complex exponential. So don't worry about that. I mean, if you don't know what complex numbers are, for our course probably it's enough to know that there is a well-known formula which is square root of minus 1 defined as I. So we will treat this as a number. In the real world, square root of minus 1 does not exist because I squared would be equal to minus 1. If I were a real number, this wouldn't be possible because the square of a number is always positive. This is very useful in mathematics. You just move to a complex world where calculations become easier. And in this way you can even solve problems by doing intermediate steps of, let's call it quote-unquote nonsense. Okay, this seems like some nonsense, but I guarantee that it is a powerful tool which allows you to move to the other world, let's say, and then come back to the real one in order to solve a problem. And this can be very, very powerful. So this is what we will use in this lecture, and in particular we will use the exponential of I alpha. Okay, I is the imaginary unit. And this is a very important exponential. It satisfies the usual constraints, the usual formulas that you know, but it can be very useful, and we'll see right now why, because let's try to write down this formula here. E to the I alpha plus e to the minus I alpha, which is also important, and divide this by 2. Okay? Then we will square this quantity and add another quantity which is very similar to the first one, which is e to the I alpha minus e to the minus I alpha divided by 2 times I, the imaginary unit, and square this. Let's see what this gives us. Okay, this is equal to, okay, we expand the first expression in parentheses. Okay, we have 1/4, and we can factor this out from the two formulas. And then we get e to the I alpha squared, which is e to the 2 I alpha. And then we have plus e to the minus 2 I alpha. And then we have plus twice the cross product of the two terms, so we have 2 times e to the I alpha times e to the minus I alpha, and remember this is equal to e to the I alpha minus I alpha, which is equal to e to the 0, which is 1. And then we do something very similar here. Remember that we have factored out 1/4, so we have 1 over I squared, but 1 over I squared is 1 over minus 1, which is minus, so we have just a minus sign. And then we square this expression here, so it's e to the 2I alpha plus e to the minus 2I alpha minus 2, and then we have minus 2 times e to the I alpha times e to the minus I alpha, which is equal to 1, just like in here. Okay, so this is the expression. Let's try to do some more calculations here. We have e to the 2I alpha minus e to the 2I alpha, and these two cancel. And then we have e to the minus 2I alpha minus e to the minus 2I alpha, so these two cancel as well. And then we have 2 minus 2, which is 4, so we have 4 by 4, and which is equal to 1, essentially. Okay, so we have 1. So these two guys here, the sum of these two guys are equal to 1, just like the cosine square plus sine square equals 1. So there must be a connection, a direct link between cosine and one of these two, and sine and the other one, right? So let's try to see what could be the connection. If we, for example, try to write cosine of alpha equals e to the I alpha plus e to the minus I alpha divided by 2. Can this be an equal sign? Well, there must be an equality, because otherwise the summation of these two couldn't be equal to 1. So one of these two must be equal to one of these two, and vice versa. So let's try with this. Let's substitute alpha equals 0, for example. If we substitute alpha equals 0, we have e to the 0 plus e to the 0 divided by 2, which is 1 plus 1 divided by 2, which is equal to 1. So the right hand side of this equation is equal to 1. What about the left hand side? The left hand side is cosine of 0, but this is also equal to 1 by definition of the cosine function, which is a function that oscillates periodically between 0 and 2 pi. So this is 0, this is pi over 2, then we have this is minus 1, this is pi, then we have 3 pi over 2, and so on and so forth, and at one point we get 2 pi, so 0, okay. So at 0 it starts at 1, whereas the sine starts at 0, if you remember, because the sine function does something like this, if you recall. It's the same as the cosine function, but it's just shifted by pi over 2. So this expression must hold, must be correct. And the other expression must be sine alpha equals e to the I alpha minus e to the minus I alpha divided by 2i. And indeed, if you substitute, for example, alpha equals 0, you get 0 on the left, because sine of 0 is 0, and 0 on the right as well, because we have 1 minus 1, so that's 0 as well. And we will use this expression right now, these two very important expressions, to derive some useful trigonometric formula. For instance, we can derive from that, let's rewrite them here. Cosine alpha equals e to the I alpha plus e to the minus I alpha divided by 2, but let me rewrite it as 2 cosine alpha. And then we have 2i sine alpha equals e to the I alpha minus e to the minus I alpha, okay? If we sum the two expressions, we can sum the left hand sides and the right hand sides, okay, to obtain another expression. So if you sum them, we have this minus this, which is 0, and then we have this plus this, which is 2 e to the I alpha. So 2 e to the I alpha is just 2 cosine alpha plus, okay, let's factor the 2 cosine alpha plus I sine alpha. So this is the expression, and we obtain e to the I alpha equal to cosine alpha plus I sine alpha, okay? Where this complex exponential, as you see, we split it into its real part and its imaginary part. The imaginary part is the part that multiplies the imaginary unit. This is the real part, the part that doesn't have any imaginary unit. This is a very famous formula, one of the most important in mathematics probably. We will use it right now to derive some trigonometric identities, which will be used next in the calculation of derivatives of trigonometric formulas. So this is why we are doing it now, but I just wanted to show you some different tricks that probably in calculus courses are not taught. Okay, let me also rewrite the fact that cosine alpha is just the real part of e to the I alpha from here, and sine alpha is just the imaginary part of e to the I alpha. This could be also useful, okay, if you write it like this, in this form, okay. So let's try to do now the following computation. What is the cosine of, for instance, alpha plus beta? This is a formula that we will need in the next lecture when we calculate the derivative of the cosine and the sine. Okay, this is something that we will need. So cosine of alpha plus beta, there are some formulas that can also be derived by some geometrical interpretations. I would like to avoid that because in my opinion this is easier. There are some simple computations. If we use this formula right here, it's much easier because the cosine of alpha plus beta is the real part of e to the I alpha plus beta, okay? This is very easy. And then we have the real part of e to the I alpha times e to the I beta, okay? And then let's use this formula right here by replacing e to the I alpha by cos alpha plus I sin alpha and e to the I beta by cos beta plus I sin beta. So we have real part of cosine alpha plus I sin alpha times cosine beta plus I sin beta. And then you can just rearrange terms. We multiply the two parentheses here, so we have real part of, so we have cos times cos, cosine alpha, cosine beta. And then what do we have? We have I sin alpha, I sin beta, which is I squared sin alpha sin beta, but I squared, remember, is just equal to minus 1. So we have minus sin alpha sin beta. And then we have cross terms, which are multiplied by I. We have I times sin alpha cosine beta and then we have plus cosine alpha times sine beta. But we need the first part, because we have to take the real part of this. So the expression just becomes equal to cosine alpha cosine beta minus sine alpha sine beta. So this is the formula, which is cosine alpha plus beta equals cosine alpha cosine beta minus sine alpha sine beta. I will add another one, which is sine alpha plus beta, and you can do this as an exercise by using this expression right here, and then this one as well, as we did just a few moments ago. But I will give you the formula here. This sine alpha plus beta can be written as sine alpha cosine beta plus cosine alpha sine beta. Okay, this is the other formula, which can be derived in a very similar fashion, and we will not do it here. But next, in the following lecture, we will use these two formulas to derive some important identities when we have to consider derivatives. And we will take the derivative of the cosine and the sine of a variable x.